Hey guys, this is Donovan Moffre-Barnes. I hope everyone's staying safe, staying healthy, staying inside. This is my article presentation. So, I did an article called Latino Politics, Gender, Participation, and Leadership by Lisa Montoya, Carol Hardy Fanta, and Sonia Garcia. I'm sorry if I butchered their names. I'm only in my second week of Spanish lessons. Pronunciation is my strong suit right now. So, this is an article that focuses primarily on Hispanics, primarily Latinos. And the article attempts to shed light on the fact that the Hispanic community is not a monolith, meaning we don't all act in the same way. They don't all vote in the same way. They don't all think the same way, like a decent chunk of America imagines they are. So the article goes through several factors associated with politics, and turnout is one important part of politics. So they use data from the Latino National Political Survey, or the LNPS. The writers are able to see specific data from both Latinos and Latinas in regards to politics. So the authors write that Latina heads of household are less likely to turn out to the polls than males are. Focusing on Latinas, they also write, according to polling, women are more likely to participate in the political process if they have an interest in politics, attend church, or involved in schools. The authors suggest that organization and political institutions have a greater ability to galvanize the Latino vote than their Latino counterparts. Meaning that if you're involved in the school board, if you're involved in the church, if you're just involved in your community in general, you're more likely to feel an obligation to vote to better that community than someone who came in from, nowhere, Idaho a couple weeks ago. So the authors then shift to party preference, citing that most women overall are registered with the Democratic Party than men. So this remains true in the case of Mexican American in Texas and California, two states, as we know, have humongous Hispanic populations. The polling done in these states showed that Mexican American men are more likely to register with the Republican Party, while Mexican American women are more likely to register with the Democratic Party. So this shatters the narrative that due to the Republican Party's hardline stance, against immigration, that practically every Hispanic individual would find them reprehensible and would be voting against the party and their agenda. So continuing with party identification, data from the 1996 election, George Bush, Bob Dole, mirrored the polling in Texas and California, with Latinos identifying the Democratic Party a whopping 69% compared to only 51% of Latinos, an 18 percentage point gap. Big stuff. Let me tell you why. Comparing this to other demographics, to other races, the gap between white men and white women voting for the Democratic Party and Bill Clinton was 8.5%. For African Americans, the same gender gap was 11.6%. So the Hispanic community by far had the biggest gender gap of all the demographics that voted in that election. So more specific polling in California also found that political activity within the Hispanic community primarily had little gender differences. However, there were differences found in non-electoral participation, which is political activities done outside the ballot box, protesting, stuff like that. The polling found that Hispanic men were more likely to contribute to political campaigns than Latinas, as well as participate in political groups. The authors also cite polling that had been done on political opinions, not just party preferences. And they state that these opinion pollings towards Hispanics are often limited and confined to immigration, which a lot of us know is characterized as number one Hispanic issue, regardless of the truth behind that assertion. And so, yes, through polling data, it was found that Latinas are more likely than Latinos to believe that legal immigration should actually be limited. Along with this, Latinos were slightly more in favor of increased government spending for the purpose of childcare than Latinos. However, Latinos weren't in favor of increasing government spending on other social programs than Latinos. These results differ from whites, where white women are more likely to favor increased spending on such programs than their male counterparts. More specific opinion polling data shows that Mexican American women were more likely to support decreased defense spending than Cuban and Puerto Rican women. The final interesting piece of data provided was that Latinos are less likely to support abortion than white men and white women. So overall, the article is very informative and helped push back on this notion that Hispanics, or any other minority group for that matter, act in a monolithic fashion. We are human beings. We all have our own opinions. We all draw our own conclusions to things. So we're not all going to fit in these neat little boxes and vote in lockstep with one another. It's also important to understand the specific parts of different minority populations to come to a better understanding of not only who they are, but their attitudes towards how this nation should function. Addressing the portion of my summary one by one it's likely that Latina heads of households don't go to polling stations as much as males do because they very well might be busier than the husband. Whether a mother is a stay-at-home mom or working, the tasks of being a mother could keep someone so busy they don't get the opportunity to go out and participate in the political process. While it might be easier for the father to find that time. There's also no surprise that Latinos who are more involved in their communities, schools, and churches tend to participate in politics more. And I should state, none of this comes from data. This is just my analysis of the data. The data didn't really give a why about why people think these things. So this is all speculation. Could be right, could be wrong, could be half right. We don't know. So these women understand their communities well. And as such, they feel more of an interest and potentially even an obligation to vote to change for the better, like we mentioned before. Women at large associating with the Democratic Party more than men at large is also not a surprise. While one may assume the primary reason women voting for the Democratic Party, it's because of their attitudes towards abortion rights, Democratic politicians are often more in favor of increased spending on schools, roads, and childcare programs. If you're a mother and you're concerned about your children, you want them going to a good school, you want the school bus that picks them up, driving on a safe road, and you want increased childcare programs so they have a good experience and they're healthy, happy children. Mexican American men, associating with the Republican Party more than women may be surprising at first. But, Texas certainly has a massive Latino population, and being a red state, it is likely that these Latinos contribute to at least some degree towards keeping that state a Republican stronghold. However, seeing the 18 percentage point gap between Latinos and Latinos registering for the Democratic Party is pretty substantial, and it begs the question of why this massive gap exists between these two groups. Latinos being able to participate in politics more than women isn't surprising for the same reason I mentioned before. It is difficult to be a woman caring for children, especially if you already work a job on top of that. I think it's estimated that women, if they work a job, on average, work an extra 9 hours than men do because of the various jobs associated with being a mom, cleaning, cooking, that kind of thing. So it's also interesting that Latinos seem to be more in favor of tighter border security than Latinos, because one would be led to assume that both genders would come to the conclusion that being tougher on border security is more often than not a dog whistle by Republican politicians to oppose non-white groups coming to this country, but this isn't the case. So more information, this topic of Latinos opposing increased immigration, would be helpful in learning why they hold such attitudes. Latinos supporting increased spending towards childcare isn't surprising. However, as the idea of mothers supporting programs to ease the burden on raising a child is easy to understand. The attitudes of Mexican Americans decreasing military spending and Latinos opposing abortion would also make much more sense with additional information. But, we don't get that, so you guys just get my speculation instead. So overall, the article provided a good insight into the Hispanic community in America and their differing attitudes towards policies. It also helped break away from the idea that the Hispanic community is a hive mind, where every member of the dominant group votes and thinks in the same way, as many Americans are led to believe. It provided interesting data on not only party demographics, but attitudes towards specific policies. As polling becomes more specific in our increasingly modernized world, we can only continue to learn more about the ever-expanding Hispanic community. So hope everyone's staying safe, staying healthy. See you later.